Namaste and good day, friends. This is Yugal Parashar for the Indian News. Yes, who is with us today, friends? None other than the Honorable Priyanca Radhakrishnan. She is the Minister for, she's actually handling quite a few portfolios, so I will have to read it out for you. So, Ms. Priyanka is Minister for Community and Voluntary Sector, Disability Issues and Diversity, Inclusion and Ethnic Communities. And she's also Associate Minister for Social Development and Employment and Workplace Relations and Safety.
That's right.
That's quite heavyweight.
Yes. Namaste, Yugalji.
Namaste
Thank you
and
for the
welcome to the Indian
opportunity.
News.
Thank you. Thank you for
So
having me.
it took me around a minute to read all your portfolios. How do you manage? How do you handle your portfolios?
I mean,
How's
it helps.
it going?
Yeah, good. Thank you. It helps that they're all portfolios that I love, that I feel very strongly about, and so it's been a privilege. It is a fair bit of work as well, and there's a lot of reading that comes with being a minister. You've got lots of cabinet papers and briefings to get through, and as you'll note, many of them are population agencies, so there are a lot of people to engage with as well. So
You think you are able to do justice with all those portfolios you're looking after?
yes,
You do?
yes. I wouldn't have kept them on if I thought I couldn't do justice to them.
Sure. So, would you mind to just highlight some of your accomplishment of your this tenure as a minister for these departments?
Sure. So with the community and voluntary sector, that is the sector that I come from prior to entering Parliament.
Yeah.
And so it's, a sector that I feel passionately about. And I've been able to work on and shepherd legislation through the House, which amended the Charities Act, which is the legal framework for all charitable organizations, registered charitable organizations in New Zealand. And we have from memory, about 28,000 registered charities, and in total about 100,000. So it's a large sector. And this is legislation that will, now that it's passed, will make it much easier for small charities by reducing reporting requirements for them, ensuring that there's a better justice appeals system for charities and so on. So things that'll make a tangible difference for charities.
Yeah.
I've also looked at how we strengthen volunteering within different community organizations as well.
Yeah.
In the ethnic community space, one of the highlights will always be the establishment of the Ministry for Ethnic Communities. That is something that so many from our communities had been advocating for a very long time. So it was great to be able to establish it. But I was also determined that the priorities of the ministry would be set by the communities that it serves. And so the team has, went out and engaged with people across New Zealand to get a sense of what is top of mind for them. That has formed the priorities and then the strategy of the ministry as well. And I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail if you'd like.
Yes,
because
please. Yeah.
People often ask me what's the difference between having a ministry and the formerly Office for Ethnic Communities.
Yeah.
The difference is this: we finally have a chief executive who sits at the top tables of decision making in the public service, who is just there to represent the needs, concerns, and aspirations of ethnic communities and to influence change across different government agencies. And that's powerful. Prior to that, with the office, what we had was, given that the office was part of the Department for Internal Affairs, it was the Chief Executive of Internal Affairs who represented our needs. He's great, but he has about 6 or 7 portfolios to represent when he's at a decision-making table. Now we have someone who leads a ministry that engages with our communities, finds out what we think about various issues, and then can feed that through to the CEOs of some of the larger government agencies. That's led to health funding being ring-fenced during COVID for our communities, whether it was around translations and getting messages out in ways that are relevant on platforms that are relevant to our communities, or organizing vaccination drives in ways that are culturally appropriate. The community connector contracts through the Ministry of Social Development, where some of our communities got contracts for the first time to provide services to ethnic communities, whether it was during COVID isolation or after the flooding events in January. All of those are firsts, and they came about because of conversations that our chief executive had with the chief executives of other agencies. So that's incredibly powerful.
So the chief executive here is Mr. Mervyn?
Yes, Mervyn Singham.
I think he's doing a good job then.
Great.
Okay, now, is there any unfinished job you think you would want to complete if your government is back on 14th of October?
There's always more work to do. With the disability issues portfolio, we are rolling out a transformation of the system that means that disabled people actually get more choice over the services that they are able to access using their funding. That has just started, so that needs to continue to roll out. With ethnic communities, we had strengthened the role of the ministry in terms of engagement with our communities. I think we can do even better in that space. It's been pointed out to me that perhaps we need to do different things differently in rural, regional New Zealand, because our communities are there as well.
Yeah.
While we are mostly here in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, I went out maybe a year and a half back to the Hawke's Bay, and they had about 60 ethnicities represented there, so there's a fair
Hawke's Bay.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a fair bit of diversity when you go out into the regions. How do we do better to ensure that their needs and their concerns that are potentially different from those of us in the cities are also represented at decision-making levels? So I'm thinking about how we can do that better, and maybe do that a little differently. There are also, I'd talked to a young woman from an Indian farming family, so third generation New Zealand Indian. This was while we were determining the priorities of the new ministry and gone out there engaging. I popped into one of the engagement sessions in Hamilton, and she said to me then that we feel like we don't fit anywhere. We don't fit in the mainstream farming circles. We don't fit in the cultural side of ethnic communities in New Zealand because we're too busy on the farms. Who's talking to us? Who's talking to us about our concerns? And that stayed with me over the last year and a half. And at Field Days this year, we put together and started a network of farmers from ethnic communities. And I got Minister O'Connor, our Agriculture Minister, to come and meet with them directly and hear from them. And at the end of that, one of them said that that was the first time they'd felt heard. So like that, there are many other groups within ethnic communities that maybe whose voices might not have been heard and who aren't represented at decision-making tables. I'd like for us to do that better as well. There are also issues like employment. And I'll make the point that there was a report that the Waitakere Ethnic Indian Association commissioned. This was through Ethnic Communities funding. Back in 2019, that showed that Kiwi Indian communities contribute about 10 billion to New Zealand's economy, which is excellent. The same report showed that there are challenges as well, that new migrants often don't get the jobs that they're qualified for. When we do get
jobs... That's a very major issue.
Yes. When we do get jobs, we're not paid the same as our Pākehā counterparts.
There's a lot of exploitation of new migrants.
Exploitation of migrant workers. We've done a fair bit in that space, but I do think there's a bit more that we need to do there as well.
Would you want to just specify this one a little more?
Sure.
What you have specifically done for the new migrant exploitation?
Yeah, sure. So that's an issue that even before I got into Parliament was an area that was close to my heart, because I had supported migrants who had been exploited beforehand. And I could see that even what we were seeing in the media, I believed was the tip of the iceberg. So in about 2018, 2019, as soon as we took office, we undertook a review to get a sense of what the scale and the severity is of migrant exploitation. From that, we've put into place a number of tools. What we were hearing, and what I've heard from many migrant workers as well, is that they were too scared to report exploitation because they were reporting it to IMBI, which is essentially the same department, the same ministry that has immigration as well. So people were worried that if they report exploitation, they'll get deported. So we've put in place a separate 0800 number, dedicated reporting line for people to be able to report exploitation. There's also the Migrant Exploitation Protection Visa, which is a specific visa to ensure that those who have been exploited can get out of that situation, the exploitative situation.
Has any step been taken against those dodgy employers?
Yep. So the only tool that we had previously was prosecution. The threshold for prosecution is very high. What we were seeing was low-level offending that wasn't being picked up, and it would just keep happening and would get worse to the point of prosecution, and then that happens. I've taken legislation through Parliament that will allow us the tools to nip low-level offending in the bud. and to be able to name and shame employers who have exploited
Yeah, I
migrants
mean,
as
it's
well.
very, very, strange to see the name suppression of those dodgy people. Why there should be a name suppression?
Name suppression is slightly different. That is the legal system that we have.
But why there should be, like, somebody is doing a wrong thing
Yeah.
and they are
That's
abusing the
usually
system, abusing the law, their name should be actually
that's usually only
known to
till
everyone.
that's only as long as the court case is going on, is my understanding of it. That's when you have name suppression.
Yeah.
Once there is a court decision, then that is generally dropped. So that won't continue. At some point, people will know who these people are. But the legislation that I took through will bring in an infringement system, which means that even if it's low-level offending, so say I've come to New Zealand, you're my employer, you've given me a contract, you're not abiding by the terms of the contract.
Yes.
Now, proactively, Immigration and the Labour Department, so the Labour Inspectorate, can proactively ask you to show those documents. So previously, that couldn't happen. It was only if there was a tip-off, then immigration could go in and check. We've changed the law so that you can proactively be asked. These are records that you need to be holding by law as the employer. You should be able to show it at any point in time. If you don't show it within 10 days, because that's also what we were seeing, there was no period of time within which these documents needed to be shown.
Yeah.
That means the cases would just drag on and there was never any conclusion. We've brought in a 10-day limit. You show us the documents within 10 days.
When
if
this
you
10-day
can't,
limit was introduced?
My legislation introduced that. That
Okay.
went through the House just a few months ago, but it's
Okay.
law now.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah, so if you don't show those documents in 10 days, you can have an infringement notice served to you, and you will be named as an employer who is not abiding by the law. That means migrant workers who come to New Zealand will be able to check against this database who are the employers who are exploiting their workers, and check that the person that has given them their offer is not on that list.
Great answer. Priyanka, like, I understand now you have been doing such a commendable work, but general perception, at least within the Indian community, is like you are not reachable as a minister. Why this perception has been created? I've come across a lot of people complaining the same thing.
That's interesting because I pride myself on being accessible, frankly.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of people reach me, whether it's through the traditional ways of email and so on, or social media platforms. People send me messages on Instagram quite often. Facebook is sometimes a little harder because there's so many.
Yeah.
I'm at a number of events, and I try and make sure that I don't just speak and leave, that there are opportunities for people to come and talk to me when I'm at events as well, and many do.
Yeah.
And I've been at
Even I happen to meet you at so many events.
Yes,
quite regularly.
I don't think you've ever struggled to come and talk to me.
I thought I might have a better access to you as a media person.
Right,
and
no,
not the
I
general
try and
people.
make sure that everyone has access to me. I've just come from an event where I think I pretty much spoke to everyone who was at that event as well. So look, I encourage people to reach out to me if there are questions that they have or things that they want to share with me about their experiences. Many do, and I would encourage everyone to do so.
Great answer. Now, Priyanka, elections are just less than a month away from today, and Labour Party has been involved in so many, controversies of late for last few months. It started actually a bit long, maybe a few months ago with Gaurav Sharma, and it has not ended yet. There have been a lot of ministerial scandals and a lot of things. You already must be aware of everything. So why this is all happening in Labour Party? Is there's a lack of discipline or something? What's wrong?
Look, we're a large caucus. We were about 65 of us. Things like this are par for the course in Parliament, frankly, within any party. You would have seen the litany of mistakes that National Party MPs have made as well over the time.
Everyone does that.
Yeah, so
there's party in the government who are, targeted more than anyone else.
Yeah, well, different ways to look at it. Ultimately, people will make mistakes. Things like that happen. You've got to deal with it and move on. I think what New Zealanders want to see from us in the next 4 weeks before the election, the lead up to the election, is that we have their backs, that we know what is important to them, what are the issues that people are facing, what do they want their government to change, basically, to make life easier for them. So that's what we will be focused on in the next few weeks. We will be getting out there, ensuring that people hear our message. Cost of living is top of mind for a number of people, regardless of the community that they come from. So our plan to, whether it's, free dental care for everyone starting with under 30s, GST off fruit and vegetable, free and half price public transport for everyone under 25.
This is what prompts me to ask you this question, where the opposition has already started accusing the government of announcing the freebies as you're coming close to the elections.
Look, it's not about freebies. It's about showing or ensuring that as a government, we're listening to what is important for people. Times have been tough. We've managed the economy well. Treasury is not forecasting a recession. In fact, they're forecasting economic growth of 2.6%.
There's a lot of dispute about these numbers.
Well, there's no dispute. You should read the report that the Treasury's put out. They're an independent body that cannot be controlled by government.
There are claims and counterclaims. So you are disputing the National's numbers. National is disputing your numbers.
Oh, it's not us. It's economists who are disputing National's figures. And they're not fronting up to explain it. So perhaps they should. But really, the figures that I'm quoting has come from Treasury, which is independent of the government of the day.
Yeah.
And it's showing that we're in good heart. We've had an international credit rating agency, Standard & Poor's, give us a tick.
Yeah.
Not saying that it hasn't been tough. It has. We're turning a corner now. In the interim, people are still finding it difficult when they go to the supermarket and to the petrol pump. And it's the duty of the government to ensure that we put in place mitigations for them. And that's what we're announcing. We've done it in the last 3 years, and we're announcing a further commitment.
So despite of best of your efforts, the successive poll surveys of last 3 or 4 times have been just showing labor just going down. They're showing no sign of any improvement. So what do you have to say about it?
That we need to stay focused. We need to get out there and make sure people are hearing our message.
Yeah. Any message for your prospective voters?
Just a reiteration of what I've said. We have managed the books well. The economy is in good shape. There will still be tough times. There are, global headwinds, but we're in a solid position to be able to deal with that in the same way that we dealt with the pandemic and the economic shock that the pandemic brought. We've weathered that storm. We're a stable and safe pair of hands to weather any storms that continue to come our way. And we will always be a government that invests in our people and the public services that all of us will have to use at some point, whether that's education, healthcare, or the infrastructure that we need to grow our cities as well.
Great. Well, on that note, we come to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for your time, Ms.
Thank
Priyanka,
you so much.
and all the very best for